Good afternoon, councillors, and welcome to Sedgemoor District Council's Joint Overview and Scrutiny Committee meeting. I'm the Committee Manager, Steve Taylor. This meeting has been held under the recent government regulations brought in to allow for remote meetings and to take place and to allow for legislative decisions to be made. Hopefully those present will hear the meeting. However, in the event of a technical failure, the Chairman will adjourn the meeting and set a new time to reinstate the meeting. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and a copy of the recording will be available on the Council's YouTube channel in the next few days. All members of the committee should have their video on but will remain muted until invited to speak. If you wish to attract the Chairman's attention, please make use of the instant messaging function. All members of the press and public will remain muted unless they have registered to speak, and the Chairman will let them know when they can make their representation. The format of the meeting will be as per the published agenda. I will now ask each councillor and officer who is taking part in the meeting to introduce themselves and confirm they can see and hear you before we start the official business of the committee. So first of all, Councillor Barber. Is Councillor Barber present? Okay, I'll move on. Councillor Bartlett.
Hello, yes, I confirm that I can see and hear everything.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Betty.
Yes, good afternoon, Steve. I can see and hear you, Councillor Auntie Betty, King Oswald.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bradford.
I can hear you loud and clear.
Thank you, Councillor Bruce.
Hello, yes, Councillor for Bridgewater Fairfax. I can see and hear everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Crowe. I'll come back. Councillor Dyer. Councillor Filmer sends his apologies. Councillor Finneran.
Oh, yes, I can hear and see you fine. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gibson.
Yeah, hello, Councillor Lee Gibson, Eastover Ward, Bridgewater, and I can hear and see you, Steve. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Godwin-Pearson.
Yes, I'm here. I can see and hear you perfectly well.
Thank you. Councillor Grimes. Nope. Come back. Councillor Harvey.
Yes, I'm here. Burnham Central. I can see and hear. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hendry.
Sedgemoor District Councillor Alistair Hendry for Burnham on Sea Central, and yes, I can see and hear everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Levy. Councillor Levy. I'll come back to Liz. Councillor Lilly.
Yes, hi, Councillor Lilly. I'm having to dial in so I can hear you.
That's fine, Councillor.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Pearce.
Yep, thank you. Councillor Pearce, Bridgewater, Westover Ward, and I confirm I can see and hear everyone. Thank you.
Councillor Revens.
Good afternoon, Councillor Bill Revens from North Petherton Ward. I can confirm I can see and hear everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Rodriguez.
Hello, yes, I can hear and see. Thank you.
Councillor Scott. Councillor Scott. Right. Councillor Smedley.
Yes, I can hear and see everybody.
Thank you, Councillor. And Councillor Wong.
Yeah, I confirm that I can see and hear everybody.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll just go through and see anybody we've missed. Councillor Levy. Can you hear us, Councillor Levy? Okay, shown as present, we're probably having difficulties. I'll just run through the other officers. We've got the leader. Can you hear us, leader?
Yep, I can hear and see. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Alison Griffin.
Yes, Steve, Alison Griffin, Chief Executive. I can see and hear everything. Thank you.
And Bob Brown.
Thank you, Steve. Bob Brown, Strategic Director. I can see and hear everything.
Rose Stokes.
Rose Stokes, Scrutiny Officer. I can hear and see everything.
Dorothy O'Farrell.
Legal Advisor to Committee. I confirm I can see and hear everything.
Thank you. And Councillor Lee Redman.
Thank you. Yes, I've managed to get in.
Lovely. Thank you, Councillor. Okay, that completes the roll call. So the first item on the agenda proper is election of chairman. Do I have any nominations, please?
Nominate Brian Smedley. Rachel Lilly.
Okay, thank you. Is that seconded at all, Kathy?
Yes, that's seconded by me. Thank you.
Any other nominations? No, in which case I'll hand over to the chairman, Councillor Brian Smedley.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Let's take the first item on the agenda, which is apologies for absence.
Yes, Chairman. Apologies from Councillor Bob Filmer.
Thank you. Then the next item is urgent business, of which I certainly don't have any. And the next item is public speaking time. We have Councillor Lee Redman here, and as the only speaker. So I'd like to ask him to give his contribution at this moment, please.
Chair, thank you for the opportunity to speak. The unitary debate was a new one to me. Over the past few months at County, I've been engaging in and listening to as much of the debate as I can. It will be no secret to most of you that I think Somerset is too big. Too often we don't listen to the people in our communities, and at times Somerset is its own worst enemy by taking decisions without considering those that we serve. I was really pleased when the districts woke up overnight and realised they should be getting involved in this debate. A little late, but at least there is now another option on the table. I must admit to taking some time to read every page of both business cases. I found several points that could be in a joint submission. But I know there is always a but. The problem still is the what-ifs. The potential outcome to this is full of them. You don't have to answer these, but if there are two different business cases, what if the Secretary of State makes changes to them and picks the bit he likes from both? What if the councillors like me and you, those willing to engage, are not listened to? I'm pleased that, like me, the district case supports the SALT recommendations. In fact, so does the county case, a really important point we all agree on. I've said it before, but it's still relevant. We need a council that's big enough to matter and small enough to care. My first question for the committee is, why don't all council leaders try to find some common ground? I feel that now, more than ever, it's important that everyone in this process try to find areas that can be agreed and submitted jointly. I suggest a great place to start is the SALT recommendations. We could use this as a starting point and then see what happens. The Secretary of State will have less wiggle room in the Somerset unitary decision if we can find and agree some common ground. The chances of a unifying outcome is increased with consensus. A couple of specific points around the plan to introduce a children's trust. I'm interested in how the stronger Somerset business case plans to protect children and their interest in the proposed new authorities. It talks about the formation of a new trust. So, what structure will the new trust take? For example, arm's length, wholly owned, employee owned, non-profit making charity, or another option? What are the governance procedures going to be? How can we be sure that money put into the trust from West will be spent there? Most of the trusts referenced in the business case were put in place by the government. Why is a children's trust right for Somerset? Where will education fit in the future, whatever the future brings? My final point is around the new authority, how the new authorities will include local engagement. One Somerset talks about local area networks, and Stronger Somerset talks about local agreements. To me, it appears they are similar in a similar place where unitary councillors, stakeholders and other interested bodies will come together and influence decision making at a true local level. I think this is another reason, another example where an urgent conversation around common ground. Sorry for posing so many questions. I hope others will seek clarification on how adult social care will work in the new authorities and how the proposed combined authority, as detailed on page 68, will not be doing the same work as the two unitaries. Thank you for your time. Just to be clear, my questions are, why don't all council leaders try to find some common ground? What structure will the new Children's Trust take? What are the governance procedures going to be? Why is a Children's Trust right for Somerset? And where will education fit in whatever the future brings? Thank you. I look forward to hearing the debate.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Redmond. Can I now take item 5, which is declarations of interest? That looks to me like there are no declarations of interest. So I'll now move on to item 6, which is the body of the debate today. That's the future of local government in Somerset. And I have to say that this is a particularly bad time to be considering local government reorganisation. It's as if it was a light year in an otherwise successful and uncontroversial government programme and not the middle of a global pandemic with a no-deal Brexit staring us in the face. But saying no, not just now, we've got better things to talk about doesn't seem to be an option, as this council has found out. So I'd like to thank Councillor Redmond for starting off. Councillor Redmond has been through both cases now with a fine tooth comb, and I would ask that officers respond to his questions during the general course of the debate. But to answer his first question personally, why can't the councils get together and work something out? Well, of course, that's exactly what was happening with the original Folgers report at the start of all this. And it was, in fact, County that broke rank and forced their own agenda onto the rest of us at the expense of that common working. So this is exactly why we now have to welcome the Stronger Somerset bid here today for scrutiny. And we should thank the officers and others who have put in the hard work and dedicated work to get this business plan together. And whatever we think of Sedgemoor over the years, we've always been served by a brilliant team of officers. If this was a genuine local government review, we'd be starting from the success of the towns, the parishes and the districts and investigating how any new network of authorities could be properly funded, more accountable and could share power at an even more local level with the communities that they exist to represent and not just plug the yawning chasm in the county Spartan treasury. So it gives us the opportunity to decide exactly where best community leadership should sit. So we do have to welcome the Stronger Somerset model. It's not what we'd necessarily all have wanted if we'd have thought about it, but its main strength can be evidenced if it can be proved to be closer to the people and that it has the best hope of achieving much needed cross-party support. So our job today is to scrutinise it to a position where we can see if it is a robust alternative to take forward to achieve that consensus and then slap it onto the table of the government alongside the One Somerset bid. So I'd like to now hand over to the people who are presenting this to us today. That's firstly to the Leader of Council, Duncan McGinty.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you very much for giving us the opportunity this afternoon to present before the Joint Scrutiny Committee and to answer questions, if we're able, because we're not saying we've got all the answers here in the business case. It's an evolving document, and it will evolve further through consultation with key partners and others, as you quite rightly said, according to the SALC recommendations. I would like to just reiterate a couple of things. I don't think any of us would be particularly wanting to be in this situation, and we have been jointly working with the county for over 2 years on providing more improved services or service delivery in Somerset. And as you say, the pandemic hit and the county then decided to go in its own way on a single unitary bid, despite the fact that we had all democratically voted to go for another course of action when the time was right. I still don't think the time is right, but we're expecting the government white paper to come out fairly soon. And within that white paper, the government will be looking for reform not only of Whitehall, but of local government. And clearly, staring that in the face, it would be far better if we can put something together that will actually reflect the localities and the communities that we represent and have represented so successfully over the past, well, since 1970 odd. So I'm grateful for the option of coming along today, and I hope that through the initial presentation it will stimulate some thought and discussion with members. I can say that the timetable seems to be fairly tight, with the government wanting certainly a new authority in place by April 2022 at this time. So it's beholden upon us all to put our input in and make something to the best of our ability. So without further ado, if it's okay with you, Chairman, I'd like to hand over to the Chief Executive and Mr. Bob Brown, who will provide a short presentation.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Chairman?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, off you go.
Steve, could you present the screen, please, for the presentation and take us to slide 2? As Duncan's just said, we do have a presentation that we just like to run through at quite a high level initially. That may or may not answer all of the questions that have been posed, but there will be an opportunity to come back with some more slides and some more questions thereafter. Are we the only ones still waiting to see the slides, or are they just still coming through?
I presented it. Hopefully it should come up in a few minutes.
Okay. I mean, just by way of introduction then, I mean, as has been reported previously, we've done a lot of work in this in the past. We've worked with the county and the districts. The pandemic came along, so we put some of it on hold for a while to concentrate on the issues at hand. But as I've said in various meetings recently, we did have a meeting with the Minister, a few weeks back, where he made it very clear that the government's thoughts at this time are very much focused on making future local authorities in across the country, which obviously Somerset forms part of that debate. I'll forge on stoically while the presentation may or may not come through, and try and make some sense. We came back round the table as districts, as I say, some weeks ago now, to pick up the work where we'd left off, and I think everybody hopefully has now had a chance to read that business case and would agree that it is a very thorough document. It is the draft business case. There is still work to be done, and as Duncan suggested just now, that work will continue, and some of the questions that you have today may not have all the finalised answers ready. What we felt when we saw the One Somerset business case is that it doesn't actually address some of the big questions. It doesn't necessarily come up with the answers to some of those challenges, whether that's the financial challenges, social care, or other things that we're looking at. And so we felt it was really important that we come up with an alternative to that, and something that can address the issues as we see them. And I think for the districts, we're very much of the view that this is not about reorganisation, this is about reform, and that the One Somerset business case, as I've said on a number of occasions, is far more structural in its approach, rather than looking at some of the systemic and cultural changes that we believe are necessary. We know we have issues to address in Somerset, and any of the comments I make this afternoon, I must say, and I would like to make absolutely clear, are not aimed at any of my colleagues, whether they work in district councils or county councils. I believe everybody's working in very difficult circumstances, but whichever way you look at that, we still know that we have areas that we need to deliver better on. We know we have 25% of our children living in poverty. We know many of our young people leave the locality to find better jobs elsewhere, and we know that we have an ageing population which really does need and deserve better services than perhaps they're getting at the moment. So, as the business case outlines, we have presented an option for a 2-unitary solution for the County of Somerset. I, like Councillor Redmond said earlier, believe that Somerset is far too big for one unitary authority, and we also believe that there are some very clear differences between the east of the county and the west, and it wasn't simply a kind of toss a coin moment to come up with the rationale for an east-west split. Certainly from the west side of things, we feel that we have very our aspirations are aligned. We've done a lot of work in recent years to make joint bids for inward investment, whether that's housing, growth generally, the M5 corridor, the coastal strip, and it goes on. So I think it makes absolute sense for us to work together in that regard. And the business case that the districts have presented is very much economic and growth focused. We believe that delivering better jobs, clean growth, better homes and better opportunities for our residents will, in effect, over time, also work towards reducing the issues we have with either children's social care or adult services. And Bob will pick up probably on some of this later as well, but I would make the point that, you know, we have seen money taken out of the prevention end of services and focus being more and more towards the what I would call the acute end of things, and this isn't working, we believe, which is why you'll see in some of the figures that we're putting money up front into transforming some of those services, which means we do have a slightly longer payback period. So everything within our business case is, as the name would suggest, looking to build a stronger Somerset for everybody that lives and works here. I haven't been telling Steve to move on the slides, but I don't think that really matters unless somebody tells me you can actually see them. No,
I can see them.
No, well, I'm on slide 4 now, if anybody's interested.
Yeah, we can see them. Thanks,
oh,
Anna.
You can. I do apologise, Steve. We're on slide 4.
Slide 4 is showing.
Thank you. As you can see, the picture there of the east and west of Somerset, which I'm sure you all recognise. One of the other points I'd like to make very clear within the discussions this afternoon is, while this is a 2-unitary proposal, it is very much a single bid. This is coming forward to all 4 districts. We've all worked on it, and everyone is in agreement that this is something that we can work on in the future, and it will require both of those unitaries to work closely in the future to cover the geography of the area. And you see also there will be questions, I'm sure, about a combined authority. We have had discussions on that. I know some of our MPs have views about looking north or looking south. And when we met the Minister, he was also very much of the view that combined authorities and devolution was something that was very high on their agenda. And if we were looking for investment into our locality, then that would come more readily with a devolution deal. So as part of that, the district proposal would see services delivered at a whole range of levels, whether that would be at a combined authority level, whether it would be at a county level or beyond through something like a children's trust or a community interest company, whether it would be through the east or west unitary, or whether it would be at a more locality level through the towns and parishes, which I know many of you are keen to hear more about. So it really is a proposal that looks at where services are best delivered, where they're best influenced and best shaped to provide better outcome for the people that we're working with. And also you'll see on slide 4 there, we talk about the enabling services, which some of us would call support services or back office services. You know, we do need to look at alternatives to drive out significant efficiencies from those services. And again, that doesn't mean that has to be a one-size-fits-all approach, because not every service is the same. I'm on to slide 5 now, Steve. So Western and Eastern Somerset replacing the district councils and the county council. I think I've just really covered probably some of that. And it is very much about decisions made at the most local level. I think, again, we've seen through the pandemic how our local communities, the voluntary sector, the parish councils have been able to step up to the plate, and how local delivery is far more effective in many areas than having it delivered either nationally or at a huge unitary, out of a huge unitary authority. So we're looking for a fresh start for adult care and children's services. I don't claim we have all the answers at this stage. We have been working with advisors on that to date, and that work needs to continue, and it will continue as we identify what the options are. We know similar delivery vehicles like Children's Trusts work really effectively elsewhere in the country, and for that reason we see no reason, if they are set up in a robust manner, then why they shouldn't work here. So that's something that we will continue to explore and continue to refine over the next few weeks. And as I suggested just now, you know, it is about having a strong financial future, whether that's just within our own finances, within the newly formed organisations, but also attracting significant investment into the area, because we know any future financial system won't be providing all of the money through grant as in the past. At that stage, I'll stop for breath, and if Bob could take over.
So we're moving on to slide 6 now, which I think is about delivering real change, impact and success. I think if you see the business case and do a compare and contrast with what's been put in for the single unitary approach, we've endeavoured to identify the opportunities and some solutions to some of the problems that we've seen, and articulate some of the problems that exist, but have focused on how we make a difference both east and west within the unique opportunities and skills that we have in the two sides of the county, and how we can utilise common practices between both east and west, whilst respecting, I think, the unique identifiers and opportunities that exist on both sides of the county. So we've done some analysis of that within the business case. So we've identified, in terms of our a modern economy, the new skills that we need, by identifying actually some of the issues that we need to tackle. So the low wage economy that exists in some of the areas, the low skills and productivity, and there are specific proposals that work both across the county in terms of working together, but also individually on the east and west, playing into some of the key opportunities that are distinct on the east and west. So taking nuclear and clean energy on the west, and aerospace on the east, as opportunities that we can explore within a two-unitary approach. In line with the county's proposals, which do have some detail about solutions, we do propose a new relationship with local communities. And we're very clear that obviously the SALT principles are important to us, but it's not just about working with parish councils and giving some devolution to parish councils, or having local agreements depending on the capabilities and the desire for local communities to take on work, so we can scale that up or down to the local community's needs. We're looking wider into the care sector and other areas to see what communities want to do in terms of delivering for themselves and delivering some resilience for the communities that are there. And that links into the fresh approach to tackling the care crisis, because it's not just about a top-down approach. We're very clear that some of the preventative activity is work that's done closest to the communities, and actually engaging with the communities and devolving that activity down to those either at parish level or wider with partner organisations is a real opportunity to tackle some of these. And when you look at the financial element, you'll see that there's a longer payback for some of the activity that we're doing, and that's because clear investment needs to be put in up front to support local preventative activity, which will have a knock-on effect of reducing demand towards the end of our financial period and be able to deliver services that actually reduce the demand on the more high-cost activity in the health sector. And clearly, not just working at a local level, but working at a wider regional level and across Somerset with our partners in health and others to make sure that this works across the piece. And I think all three of those areas are linked in with our approach to the combined authority. We're conscious that if we want to level up and we want to get investment from the government, combined authorities are an important vehicle for the government. We've made proposals that we will have a combined authority, at least on the template of the current county, so both East and West working together to achieve that. But we keep our options open as to whether we continue to look south to the heart of the southwest and work with those public sector organisations, LEPs and other local authorities, or whether we look north where there's a growing need to make sure that we link into WECA. And clearly for us in Sedgemoor, those communities that sit to the north of our community and perhaps look up towards North Somerset are important to take into account and make sure that whatever local community or solutions are devised work for them, and we make the connections both regionally as well as within Somerset itself. So if we move on to slide 6, you can see that we've got concrete proposals for dealing for each of the areas that we've got. So it's not just about saying that some of this stuff will be made easier to deliver if we become a unitary council, because a unitary council is a solution to these issues. We've got some systemic and system-based approaches and proposals to tackle those. So, stronger adult care, working with local communities, tackling the issues that we've identified like isolation, and making proposals about the living well schemes, and seeing how things have worked in places like Croydon, where prevention and resilience have worked and have reduced the costs to the local authority over a longer period. Working with our communities, I've already said, about making sure that we don't have a one-size-fits-all for all our local communities, but respect the local communities, their capacity to deliver and their desire to deliver for their local communities. And that's not just about devolving some district or county services down, but looking more widely at what a difference we can make across the whole spectrum of health and local authority services to improve outcomes. And that comes with stronger collaboration. So that's not just about looking down locally, but looking across the whole of Somerset, so that East and West work together on those services that can make a difference, those enabling services that can reduce costs, and we can share not just with between East and West, but also down with local partners, other public sector organisations, and with parish councils to give them the sort of support that they need in order to be able to take up the challenge of delivering in a more comprehensive way for the communities in a way that's agreed and structured through the communities. I think all in all, that will lead to a stronger Somerset, which is the last point on slide 7, because I think as a district-based approach, it's closer to the communities. Districts have got a good reputation for being plugged into their communities and closer to them, and this builds on that whilst respecting the size and scale of a reasonable unitary authority that's not too big, not too remote, as in a single county approach, and will have sufficient democratic representation on both sides to make sure that communities are properly represented at that level. I think the business case says that there will be up to 100 members on each side, so that communities are properly represented. So handing it back over to Alison.
Okay, thanks, Steve. On to the next slide, please. Just a couple of final things I wanted to cover before I hand back for questions. Slide 8 looks at the very high level finance figures. We do have a 5-year savings of around 56 million, which is more than the one Somerset approach, and then that increases further over the 10-year period. And as I've said a number of times in the last half hour, that's the difference in some of our figures is because we have put money in earlier in the programme to try and affect some of the transformational change which we think we need to bring about. We have followed the government guidelines pretty much to the letter in pulling our figures together. We've worked with the PA consultancy who work with the Treasury and generally with government pulling together and assessing bids that go in. So I think we've had some very sound advice in that regard. We have brought our figures back for those of you who are interested enough in it to net present value, which I don't believe the one Somerset business case does. So clearly that makes some difference. But overall, while we maybe have a slightly slower start, the proposals that we have in our business case do deliver greater savings longer term. And I say that is an approach of investment rather than cuts to try and make the changes that we believe are necessary. Yes, there are savings obviously, and yes, there will be some changes within our structures and our authorities as a result of that. Although I would remind members at this stage that everything that goes in the business case, whatever the Minister decides ultimately, the kind of granular detail will very much be dictated by those in charge and running the new organisations when they're finally in place. And as I mentioned earlier, the enabling services side of things is where you would absolutely expect to see some very real efficiencies being driven out through the combination of organisations. So the next steps, obviously this week is a crucial week with all districts taking their reports either through a variety of scrutiny, exec cabinet, and then obviously onto full councils. That will finish on Thursday, thank goodness, at which time we will then know what shape that takes through the various decision-making processes. And we're still currently on track, subject to approval, obviously, to submit the draft business case to the Secretary of State in the middle of this month. As yet, to the best of my knowledge, I've certainly not seen an invitation arrive. And then, as that final slide says, we have an 8-week consultation period, which we believe will be in the run-up to Christmas, with a view to shadow authorities in place if approved by April of next year. And then finally, just on the next slide, is a reminder of where you can find more information should you want it. I was planning to stop at that stage, Chairman, if you'd like to open it up for questions or comments, and we'll try and fill any other gaps if we can.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Before I open it up to the committee for questions and statements, I'd just like to sum up the key lines of inquiry that any good scrutiny committee needs to follow. We clearly want to know that this is a genuine review which has got a serious outcome at the end of the day. You say reform is the key thing that you've mentioned in that. We want to know that the geography is right, that the east-west fit is the correct one, that there's no democratic deficit, i.e. that the most representative representation of councillors per wards is correct in that. We know that this can be demonstrated through cross-party support. We want to know that the finances stack up. And it's not just a race to who can deliver more cuts. We appreciate that the emphasis was on investment in that. That was quite important. We want to know that there's better jobs and services on offer. And you mentioned the low-wage economy in that, which is a very, very important point. Climate change wasn't mentioned, but I think we should be factoring that in somewhere. You did mention that decisions should be made at the most local level, which is in common with the SALC position. That has been mentioned, so we'd like to know how you intend to achieve that. And then there's the 4 items that Councillor Redman mentioned earlier on, which are very important: the delivery of key services, particularly adult care and children's services. You've promised a fresh start with that. You talked of a combined authority. So questions about what structure of the Children's Trust, the governance procedures, what is a Children's Trust right for Somerset, and where education would fit into that. Those are the things I picked up out of your presentation. So I'd now like to open that up, and I notice that Councillor Revens would like to come in first. Councillor Revens.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I'm very pleased to open this one up. I think the first question I would agree with the leader is the question, why now? It seems surreal that in the middle of a pandemic, with the unforeseen and unknown consequences of Brexit also coming above us, to reorganise local government and some essential services that people rely on at this stage seems a bizarre and absurd situation. But we are where we are, and we have. It is I think with disappointment that we're in this situation. We have of course been here before. I was an officer with Somerset County Council in the Library Service in 1993, and I was a teacher with Somerset County Council in 2006. And so I found myself as a councillor on 2 authorities in 2020. This is a solution that I like, and in principle I am very much in favour of it. I think it recognises the historic traditions and culture of Somerset, but recognises that it's a massive county, even on its current borders. It's over 2 hours to drive from one end to the other. It's over 500,000 population. It of course doesn't include the areas of Somerset that would have contributed to Alfred the Great's victory at Eddington, or indeed celebrated the Ian Botham, Viv Richards victories in the cricket. Somerset is a wider concept than the current Somerset County Council, which I'm sure Mr. Jacob Rees-Mogg would probably agree with. My specific inquiries on this would be around those services that Somerset County Council currently provide that are around caring for people. Councillor Redmond was I think really hit the nail on the head with his questions about the Children's Trust, and I do appreciate this is detail that we perhaps don't have yet, but we need it. I hear what the Chief Executive says when she says Children's Trusts work really effectively in other parts of the country, but that is not necessarily the experience of all Children's Trusts. I was on a call on Saturday with somebody from the County Council Network. I appreciate there's a little bit of a Mandy Rice-Davis about any comment from the County Council's network. However, he did rightly say that the performances of areas where we've got trusts in place isn't actually that good. Now, that of course there is a selective bias in that they are areas in which children's services have been rated as inadequate, and so by their very nature they're areas in which it's tough to provide those services. And I would hope that we look very carefully before we go down that route, and I wonder whether this is an area under which a combined authority or joint working arrangement would be better than going down the Children's Trust route, that we keep the expertise of the staff that are already engaged in that, and really look at the challenges of trying to get into the prevention work rather than seeing a trust as being the solution to that. So I do have very great reservations on that. Also, I'd be interested to understand how we work around adult social care as well. I know a lot of adult social care services have been put out to the private sector or community interest companies or to charities. We need to make sure we commission for the right results for those services, and I'm not sure that I get a sense of how that will work. In particular, where if we're looking at prevention, we're looking in areas like public health and joint commissioning with the health service, and I'm worried that a split in the county council area would set back the joint commissioning work that's been done over the last few years, where I think improvement steps have been taken. So I'll be interested in understanding a little bit more about those areas. I could probably warble on about this for at some length, but I am aware that other councillors may also have questions, so I'll just focus my questions around on those two social care points about the Children's Trust. Are we really convinced we've got the right answer, and how are we going to commission effectively for outcomes with the health service to get better outcomes in adult social care? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Could I ask anybody around the top table to answer or respond to any of those points by Councillor Evans?
Thank you, Chairman. If I just come in, and colleagues may want to add to what I say. I mean, I think that the points are very, very well made. The joint commissioning is a key issue, and I think our general approach across the piece is where agreements at scale are working, they should not be messed with. And certainly, you know, with the changes and the improvements that have been made with joint commissioning with the health sector over the last few years, we would not want to change that, which is why I made the point earlier also that while we're looking at two unitary authorities, that doesn't mean to say that they have to operate, I don't know if unilaterally is the right word, but independently, and lose the benefit where the joint coming together and the joint negotiation and commissioning works. So that's something that we would hold very dear to any future negotiations and any plans on this. A Children's Trust, that is something that's been brought forward at the moment. I don't think at this point in time we are 110% wedded to any final solution. I think we recognise that we don't know, or we don't have all the answers at the moment. We know there is room for improvement. We know there is more that can be done, and we will continue to work with that. And I think it's quite right for anybody that's looking at these presentations to ask those questions, and there is more work for us to do. So that's as much reassurance as I can give at the moment, but I think it is healthy that we recognise we don't have all the answers. If I was sat here telling you we did, then I would be concerned if I was sat in your shoes.
Just to say, Chairman, that obviously the business case was put together with the Social Care Institute for Children, so they were the agency that we went to in order to assist us in bringing this together, and I think they're the experts in this particular area. So we've taken take some guidance from those in terms of putting together the proposals that we have. But just to echo what the Chief Executive said, it is a work in progress, and we intend to build that out and bring in some more capacity to develop that out as we go through the process.
Am I able to come back, Councillor Smith?
Yes, could you come back if you'd like to, Councillor Evans?
Thank you so much. Thank you for that reassurance that we don't have all the answers. I think that's helpful, and we are still operating at quite a high strategic level. I think one of the disappointments, which is possibly a process issue that we might want to think about, is that the Chief Executive of the County Council was very disappointed that their staff weren't asked to contribute towards the Stronger Somerset case. There is a great deal of expertise and knowledge there that I think could have strengthened the Stronger Somerset case on both adults and children's social care. I think it is disappointing that approach wasn't made. I think there is an anticipation of hostility that may not be there, and I think that's possibly a lesson to learn. Thank you, Councillor Smedley.
Okay, thank you. Can I take Councillor Pearce next, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to reiterate the points that Councillor Evans made about concerns about what this Children's Trust or a Children's Trust may look like, and potentially it's generating fears that may not be valid. And personally, I'd be really concerned if we were talking about out-commissioning, i.e. privatising children's services, but it doesn't say that in this document, so we don't know. You've mentioned Croydon Council, and I noticed that they don't mention a children's trust in their on their website. They work to a Children's and Families Board, which is a multi-agency board, which I would expect to see. Also, there is scant information about education and special educational needs and disability, as Councillor Redman alluded to. So it would be good to know the thinking around that, as strategically the County Council currently has a responsibility around special educational needs. It would be good to see a little more around climate change issues. All the districts and the county are putting a lot of work around this, and it seems to have dropped. I fear it's dropping down the agenda. In terms of a little more clarity about exactly which elements would be covered at which level, I just wonder, on page 69 of the business case, there is various elements which would be covered by combined authority, shared service, Somerset West, Somerset East. I wonder if that's an opportunity to include some more specifics there, which would hopefully give us some peace of mind, some more peace of mind. And finally, something I'd really be interested to know more about is the process for devolving or transferring responsibilities to towns and parishes, and what sort of negotiations this will involve. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Would people on the top table like to respond to those 6 points of Councillor Pearce's?
Yeah, thank you. The special educational needs side of things needs to be worked through, I think, very much with the children's services generally, and how we work with the education side of things. That is something that we're still in discussion on and needs further refinement. And we're at this point in time looking to work with someone who can help and advise with that. So that is something, again, through that wider commissioning work that we would need to look at. So I would need to come back to you with a little more detail on that. I think we recognise that as an area that we need to think through in more detail. We had a conversation with the Chief Executive of the County Council last week where we discussed the specific, among others. So that is something that we're continuing to look at this time. Climate change, yes. I mean, it runs through the business case. I didn't really touch on it much in the presentation. I suppose it's almost a given, but I hear what you're saying, that perhaps it needs to have a higher profile in the business case. I think perhaps we didn't necessarily see it as something that was as tied to structural changes as perhaps some other service delivery elements. So, but you know, I've noted it down. I'll take that on board. The specifics of working with the towns and parishes, I think we're very much, the county proposal, I think, looks at having up to about 15 configurations of almost clusters of towns and parishes coming together, which they say they would service almost, and this is my terminology, in the form of kind of area committees. We're not proposing that kind of approach at the moment, in my view. And I think also what we're looking at is a much wider time frame for working with the towns and parishes for the delivery of services, transfer of functions, transfer of any funding following that, because we believe, and from discussions I've had with some of the towns and parishes already, they're not a one-size-fits-all. So they're not all going to be ready on day one to stand up and take things on. There will be an evolution there as to whether services or assets transfer, or whether we negotiate different levels of service and it's still delivered through the new unitaries. So again, I think that's something that we recognise will actually need to evolve, certainly before vesting day, but even more so after that time as well, because the world is a changing place at the moment, and we've committed to facilitation with the town and parish councils to work through what they could and would like to do. And I think some of that is not just about some of the services we might traditionally think of, which are always the really sexy services like dog bins and toilets and such like, but actually the kind of together team, one team type approach, that real community involvement within their locality. So that's the approach we're looking to take at the moment, which is a very adult conversation, I would describe it as.
I think just to support what the Chief Executive said, obviously in the Executive Summary we make out what our 5 ambitions are of this, and transiting to net zero is one of those ambitions. I think, as you say, Councillor Pearce, I think there could be some more emphasis on that in the business case, and we'll look to make sure that we stress that commitment that's already been made by all of the local authorities is articulated, properly.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Pearce, do you wish to come back on that at all?
Not at the moment, thank you.
Okay, so I'd like to now go to Councillor Wong.
Oh, hi. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I've got 4 separate questions on the matter. I mean, as we all know, I mean, we are still in the middle of the pandemic, and we are facing some very uncertain economical time. Our GDP had just dropped 20% in the last quarter. So my first question would be, what is the potential implication on jobs and number of redundancy that are likely to make on each proposal? Would we be cutting more jobs or less jobs in this stronger Somerset proposal? My second question is, looking through the financial figures, there is a suggestion that the implementation costs for stronger Somerset is slightly higher than option D, which is 1 Somerset. Is there a specific reason why this is the case? My third question would be, there seems, according to the financial statement in the proposal, they seem to suggest that the stronger Somerset proposal would significantly outperform the 1 Somerset proposal in indirect benefit. Are we in a position to elaborate this a little bit more so that we can understand this more clearly? And my final question, which is a little bit technical, is in relation to the calculation of this net present value. We all know that, according to the financial literature, if the lower rate of return is used to calculate this, sometimes it can show a false profitability when there were none in a specific project. So my question would be, what is the rate of return which is used when it comes to calculate the discount factors for the future cash flow under our statement? That will be all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Over to the top table to respond.
Well, I'll give it a go. I'll take them in the order they were presented. Job losses. We haven't got a specific number of jobs that it's based on. The calculations that are made are based on best practice and what is expected in a transition of this kind. What I would say, somewhat tongue-in-cheek, is I'm sure if you ask the CCN, they would say I would expect them to say there'd be more job losses in a single unitary than a 2 unitary, because they would say that there are less economies of scale and less benefits from a 2 unitary. So if your concern is around job losses, I would say the 2 unitary proposal loses less jobs. That's not a very serious answer, actually. It will depend on how it's implemented. If you look at if you work it through, it's not a significant number of jobs that go. And what I would say is it would be incumbent on any newly created organisation to work with effective personnel procedures which would allow for redeployment, voluntary losses where appropriate, not just because people want to go. And I think in that way we can manage the actual number of people that are adversely affected to an absolute minimum, and that would be the way we would approach it. But there isn't a fixed figure that, as in numbers of people that are modelled in here. The higher implementation costs, I would have to go back. I've got the figures for Stronger Somerset in front of me, but I'm afraid I'd need to go back and compare those with the implementation costs of One Somerset to see where they differ. But I'm more than happy to do that and provide a written answer if that's helpful afterwards. But I'm sure there will be some slightly different assumptions on say the shape and size of new management structures, accommodation and such like, and that's where I would expect the differences to come from. But I can get somebody to go back and look at that in detail. Sorry, just trying to understand my own shorthand. Stronger Somerset outperforming One Somerset in the indirect benefits. I think that was the question. I think that's because One Somerset quite clearly says that it doesn't actually look beyond the direct cost and benefits, which are those associated purely with the structural reorganisation. The indirect benefits are those that are then achievable through alternative means of service delivery, and I think we've looked much further and been somewhat more aspirational in our process changes and the way we see services being delivered, which is where I've talked about, more prevention, driving need out of the system, and just maybe greater digital delivery and so on and so forth. So that's what plays into the indirect benefits, which is why I would say the Stronger Somerset business case performs better on that. And again, I'm just looking at the business case and I can't see the NPV quoted. I think it's 5%, but I'd have to check. And in the meantime, well, if anybody's answering other questions, if I find that in the paperwork, I'll come back and confirm that. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, could I just ask Councillor McGinty if you wanted to ask yourself a question or respond to Councillor Wong?
Perhaps respond to Councillor Wong and by implication perhaps Councillor Evans as well. Just to say, I would expect on something of this nature to be a reduction in more senior staff levels rather than those that are actually at the coalface if and when staff reductions or redundancies are spoken about. I would also stay on the initial cost. I think we're not going for total structural change, as the Chief Exec has said. We're looking to invest in services to improve them. It's all about levelling up rather than levelling down. There seems no point in just going out for a structural change. Many local authorities have gone for structural change in the past. And I think you'd be hard pushed to find any benefit that comes from a purely structural change. So that's something we don't want to do. We want to be innovative and provide better quality services and get back to the prevention area, which we've, I think, performed well, certainly with our One and Together teams, where that big hole has been left. And by doing that preventative work, you do in the long term cut down your intervention levels or the need for intervention levels. So that's our thinking behind all this. Thank you.
Councillor Wong, do you wish to come back on any of those points?
No, it's okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I now go to Councillor Finneran?
Yes, good afternoon. Firstly, I concur with everyone that's spoken first in that I think it's completely the wrong time to be doing this, but that's I think we're all in agreement with. But one thing I would ask is that when we move forward with these discussions, can we please ensure that that healthcare provision is considered with regard to the north? Because in the north we have a lot of our healthcare comes from North Somerset or indeed Mendip, And my concern, and the concern of a lot of people here, is that the proposals, which seem to be very heavily Bridgwater Taunton centric, are not going to consider the existing arrangements that are already in place. It's as simple as that. Thank you.
Okay, would anybody on the top table like to respond to Councillor Finneran?
Yes, certainly. I mean, absolutely, that needs to be taken into account. I hope and I will go back and look at the business case and have these discussions. The aim is not that they should be Taunton and Bridgwater centric. Those areas always get mentioned for the obvious reasons of population basis and what have you, but this business case should not be centralised on those urban areas. It's absolutely in the new relationship. In the new relationships and the working with the towns and parishes and localities, we should make it less Bridgwater Taunton centric, not more. So I take on board your comments, and I will bear that in mind when I go back and have further discussions.
Councillor Keane has indicated that she wishes to speak. She's not a member of either committee, but as a portfolio holder, would like to respond to Councillor Finneran's point. Councillor Keane.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, everyone. Paul mentioned the healthcare facilities. Well, at the open forum meeting last week, which was Fit for My Future, it dealt mainly on mental health. And I was very disappointed that most of the thinking and the discussion featured directing patients to what are really quite scarce facilities, to Bath or to Yeovil, and entirely ignoring the north part of Sedgemoor. I did mention this and ask the chairman of that webinar to comment, because people living in North Sedgemoor have fast and fairly easy access to Weston-super-Mare, which has as a general hospital. It does have an A&E. It also has a mental health unit in the grounds, the Long Fox unit, adjacent. And that was quite arbitrarily dismissed. And I wonder if Paul's point of that general health care, both physical and mental health care, can be somehow shoehorned into the discussion. Because if the provisions are willing to cross boundaries on the northeast of the county, I fail to see why they are refusing to cross boundaries at this part of the county. Thank you, Chairman.
Would Councillor McGinty like to come back in?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I just want to reiterate something that was said earlier. Looking north is an important part of this. And those services that could be delivered through a combined authority and gain better qualities of service by looking north, or indeed looking south, will be part of the discussions in the future, because I certainly recognise the value of Weston and the health trusts to the north of us. And those discussions are keen to be had by the local MPs in the north as well. So that it's part of an evolving situation that will not go away, and we will prominently argue for in the future.
Thank you. Councillor Finneran, do you wish to come back to any of those points?
No, that's fine, thank you. Other than to thank Janet for basically bolstering the point that I had made. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I now go to Councillor Harvey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to concentrate on the combined authority. First of all, if you like playing devil's advocate, one might say that if we're proposing a combined authority, why not one Somerset? Because that's obviously the most combined of combined authorities you could get. But my more serious point is that when looking at the table that people have referred to before on page 68, it does say combined authority operating beyond Somerset and bringing powers and resources down from national government. And I'm wondering what exactly is meant by combined authority operating beyond Somerset. Are we looking at in the future to further structural change, for example, combining with North Somerset, which at the moment is not part of the West of England Combined Authority? Are we looking at becoming a combined authority with Wecker, or with Dorset, or with Devon? What is the long-term thinking? Or am I simply completely misconstruing that phrase about operating beyond Somerset? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Over to the top table to respond, if you could.
Sure. I think in terms of the combined authority, we've made a commitment that we should be looking at least, obviously, for Somerset wide combined authority, but in the general rule, combined authorities go beyond one authority. I think it's only Cornwall that has a combined authority that sits just over the totality of its area, and there are unique circumstances that arise in Greater Cornwall as to why that may be the case. And obviously the whole point of a combined authority is to get all the partners within the area to work together. The government's looking at mayors for combined authorities. Obviously, currently we're in a LEP area, and we've had discussions because we've got a joint committee looking at investment and economic development with the Heart of the South West. Whether that's the way that we look for the combined authority or whether we look north towards Wecker, are discussions that need to be resolved within this case as we take it forward. But I think the combined authority is bigger than just local authority services and the sort of the wider perhaps health and well-being. It's about the levelling up agenda around bringing in lots of different partners. And obviously there are challenges in our area because of the lack of coterminous public sector authorities, whether that's fire, the police and others, but all of those will need to be brought into a combined authority if you're going to bring the right partners in to make a difference and contribute to the levelling up agenda, which is about increasing our skills, increasing our salaries and increasing productivity. So I think it's a wider issue than that, and the jury's still out as to whether that's looking north or whether that's looking south. But we need to commit to the government's agenda if we're going to seek to get any devolved funds down to us to be able to make a difference in that regard. I mean, we've got to be clear that obviously complying with the government's rules about funding is an important step to take if we're going to secure reasonable funding for economic development activity.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to come back on that all, Councillor Harvey?
Mute.
Are you muted, Councillor Harvey?
Apologies. I said, thanks for that. I think we're in an evolving situation.
Indeed.
I'm not a great fan of elected mayors, but that's the way it seems that we have to go. I mean, when I think about Wecker, I can certainly name the mayor of Bristol, but I haven't the faintest idea who is the mayor of Wecker. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And any more questions? Councillor Pearce.
Yep, thank you, Chairman. Just given the short notice that this has been compiled, I think it's a good document. But given that there are some gaps in it, I just wondered what the process is for filling in those gaps that have been raised today, and the timetable for being able to do that, and having a combined bid with the other districts as well, because my worry is with it is high level and aspirational, but the One Somerset document does contain some more detail than is contained within here about specifics, and my worry is that somebody reading both bids in Whitehall will be looking to the one with the slightly more detail. So it's really how you are planning to address that and your thoughts on that, please.
Let's respond to that over the top table there.
Yeah, I'll come in, and others may wish to add slightly more. I mean, we're meeting daily, 8:30 daily, each day now, other than Saturday and Sunday, to review the document, to review our communications and everything that goes with it. As I say, this is a draft document. We will continue with the work where we're taking advice on particular areas, and we will need to then put the full business case into government. I said the time is very tight. I don't know, Bob may be able to advise me, whether once we've submitted, because I say we've only got a few weeks to submit now, based on the current timetable, how much change we can affect in that. But I would anticipate far more detail and meat being put on the bone thereafter. What I would say is I think maybe some of the answers are not quite as clear, or some of the proposals are not quite as clear in the 2 unitary bid, because we are exploring new territory. And I think we're looking at alternatives to what has gone before, and as a consequence of that, there is more work to be done. As I said earlier, there are areas we recognise where we don't have all the answers. So I think we could have more answers that we put in that were simple and not so challenging or aspirational, but we are looking to push the boundaries here to make sure that we have a really robust, effective proposal for the future. So that's where I see it at the moment, but we're very much in the hands of the government time frame. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think it's worth saying that I think our business case does concentrate on those areas that the government indicated were clear priorities for them, for us to address around the care issues, both older people and children, the levelling up agenda, and then efficiencies. Those seem to be the 4 areas, hence the reason why our business case focuses on that, because really the key sort of the key judging panel here sits in DCLG or MHCLG, and they've indicated that's where their priorities are. I think we are conscious that there are areas where we need more detail, and education is clearly one of those, and some of the others that have already been highlighted here. So where there are gaps, or rather than gaps, where there's more information needed, then I think there'll be an opportunity for us to put that to government as we go through. I mean, we're conscious that we've not had the invitation yet, so there is time to bolster those areas, and we are looking urgently to fill the gaps in terms of capacity that we have at district level, to making sure that we've got good quality support from individuals who are experts in child care issues, adult care issues, and education, that will be able to give us that support and detail and a set of proposals that we can back up with their skills and their knowledge, to show that we do understand the issues and have got concrete proposals.
Councillor McGinty, do you wish to come back?
Yeah, I would just say, whilst there is a fairly short time scale here, the process that normally happens is you put in a high-level business case bid, then there is an iterative process that takes place with the government and the civil servants in order to get it into the shape that they feel confident in supporting and we feel comfortable in putting forward. So there are, or there should be, a number of opportunities through the process after it's initially submitted to make changes and make it a better document that will provide better services for the people of Somerset.
Thank you. Councillor Pearce, do you wish to come back on that at all?
No, only thank you. That's really helpful. Thanks.
Okay. Are there any other questions from any other members of committee? No. In which? Who's that now? I can't see.
It's Alison. Sorry.
Oh, go on then.
Yeah, just a couple of comments I wanted to make. It feels like we're coming to the end, but if there's more questions, fantastic. There's been a lot quite rightly said about children's and adult services, and I think, hopefully we've given some assurance that we're looking at that. What I just feel I would like to say as well is the District Council also delivers some very complex services to our communities, homelessness, all the benefits service and everything else. They're not all as simple as perhaps some people outside of the district environment might think. So, I would hope there would be some questions from the other side of the table in that regard, because we need to ensure whatever solution whatever the ultimate new shape of local government, make sure that a lot of those valuable services are continue to operate at a very high level. And as the Chief Executive of Sedgemoor, I just felt I needed to say that. And I'd just like to say that, you know, we are already working very closely now with Somerset, West and Taunton to look at how we can reshape our services, prepare to ensure that should whatever decision the government comes up with, that the west of the county is very well placed for whatever the new structure should be. And I'm sure that I know that the same similar work is going on between South Somerset and Mendip. So, you know, we're not just sitting refining the document and waiting for submission. We are engaging in some very positive work on the ground to ensure that we're as strong a position as we possibly can to deliver services for the future.
Okay, so thank you very much for that. What I'd like to do now is go to a proposal. Councillor Pearce has sent me some words in the light of the last comments. That's the motion as recommended plus 5 points to take into consideration. I'm going to actually copy and paste that in the chat section for you now, which essentially endorses the business case but says that the 5 considerations that we've been raised throughout the meeting, which refer to children's services, to localism and frontline services, are investigated further. As has been indicated, there is time and desire to do that. So I'd like to call for a seconder, if possible, for that. Cathy Pearce has proposed that. Councillor Revens has seconded that. Is there any amendment or to the contrary so far? Otherwise I'll go straight to a vote on it. Okay, I'd like to take a straightforward vote on that being a recommendation. Would the committee clerk like to take the voting procedure?
Yes, Chairman. I'll read through the list of councillors. If they can just confirm they heard the debate and were there for, against or abstaining against the proposal. So Councillor Bartlett, please.
Yes, I heard the proposal and I am for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Betty? Councillor Betty?
Sorry, yes, I heard the debate and I'm for the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bradford?
Thank you. I've heard the recommendation. I'm for it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bruce?
Yes, I heard the debate. Thank you, and I'm for.
Thank you. Councillor Crowe?
I've heard the debate and I'm abstaining.
Thank you. Councillor Finneran?
Yes, I heard the debate and I'm for it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gibson? Councillor Gibson? I'll come back to Councillor Gibson. Councillor Godwin-Pearson?
Yes, thank you. I heard the debate and I'm for it.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey?
I heard the debate and I am for it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hendry? Councillor Hendry? Councillor Liz Levy?
I heard the debate and I'm for it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Lilly?
Yeah, I heard the debate. It was very interesting and I'm for it.
Thank you. Councillor Pearce?
Yep. Thank you. Yes, I heard the debate and I'm for the recommendations.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Revens?
Thank you very much, Mr. Taylor. Yes, I heard all the debates and I'm very much in favour of the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rodriguez?
Yes, I've heard the debate and I'm for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Scott?
Yes, thank you. I heard the debate and I'm for it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Smedley?
Yes, I heard the debate and I'm for it.
Thank you. Councillor Wong?
Yes, I heard the debate. I'm for it.
Thank you very much. Just check Councillor Gibson. and Councillor Hendry. They no longer appear to be in the meeting, but that's clearly carried, Chairman.
Thank you very much. I calculate that as 15 for, 1 abstention, 2 not present for the vote. So thank you very much for your attendance today. This will go forward now to executive and to full council later in the week. So I declare the meeting closed.